2 Kings, chapter 4. Most people stop reading this story the moment the oil stops. They think the miracle is over. But the most dangerous moment in the widow's story actually begins after the jars are full. Because when God answers your prayer, something unexpected happens. Relief comes, but so does pressure. The oil stopped. The room went quiet. And now the widow must face something harder than lack. Enough. Let's step inside that room. The oil did not stop because God withdrew. It stopped because every jar was full. This is one of the most important moments in the story, and it's often skipped. "Bring me another jar," she says. There isn't another one. Then the oil stopped. And when it stopped, the room went quiet. Not the quiet of absence, no explanation. Just silence. That silence is not absence, it is transition. The pouring is over. The miracle has settled. God is not done. He's only done pouring. And now the widow must sit with something new. Enough. Enough is heavier than lack. Lack keeps you moving. Enough makes you think. And something else now needs to catch up. Many believers know how to pray for breakthrough, endure lack, speak faith in crisis. But they don't always know how to live without fear as a motivator, handle options without panic, carry provision without guilt, be faithful when the pressure is gone. Relief comes first. For a moment, the widow can breathe. The creditor is no longer at the door. Her sons are no longer counted as collateral. The future has opened, even if only slightly. But relief does not stay alone. Although she is anchored, not panicking, it is quickly followed by something heavier. Overwhelm. Emotionally, she could be exhausted by expansion. I prayed for this. Why do I feel unsettled? Why does peace feel strange? Why am I rushing when I'm no longer chased? Why do I feel pressure to decide everything now? Nothing is wrong with you. You are learning how to live without panic. The miracle did not end when the oil stopped. It ended the season where fear was permitted to lead. Psalm 142, 3a says, "When my spirit grows faint within me, it is you who watch over my way." God answered her prayer and then trusted her with silence. For a long time, her life had one organizing principle: survive. Survive the debt. Survive the fear. Survive the waiting. Fear gave her structure. It shaped her prayers, set her urgency, narrowed her focus, told her what mattered. Fear told her who she was. But now, the oil has stopped. And when the oil stops, fear stops being useful. And many people don't know who they are without it. She stands surrounded by full jars, emotional weight inside the miracle. Her sons are there too. They have watched fear dominate their mother, watched debt threaten their future, watched oil do the impossible. They are not celebrating. They are observing. They understand something is still unresolved. Relief arrives with shock, with disbelief, with a rush of ideas, with 1,000 what-ifs. The room is suddenly too small for their thoughts. This is the moment when panic can disguise itself as productivity. Excitement can mimic obedience. Movement can feel like faith, but it isn't yet. Faith does not only move you to act. Sometimes Faith stops you from acting too soon. The oil stopping is not loss. It is God teaching her to pause inside abundance. In that closed room, one can imagine her thoughts racing ahead of the instruction. Did I really hear God? What if this collapses tomorrow? What if I misstep and lose everything? What if survival felt simpler when the only fear was losing my sons before the weight of responsibility replaced it? The crisis outside has ended, but the crisis inside is still loud. If she listens only to that noise, she will either rush or freeze. Both are forms of self-sabotage. Paralysis often disguises itself as wisdom. I'm just being careful. I need more confirmation. I don't want to mess this up. But confidence is not what she needs. She needs discernment. Confidence asks, "Am I ready?" Discernment asks, "Am I instructed?" Discernment is not overthinking. It is listening for alignment. It separates fear-based urgency from God-directed timing. It senses when movement would be premature. It knows when to seek counsel instead of improvising. Discernment does not answer every "what if?" It chooses which voices deserve attention. Now comes the discomfort of moving from prayer to planning, from crying out to cashing in, from miracle to management. This is where being debt-free can feel scarier than being in debt. Stability feels suspicious, and people unconsciously recreate crisis because it feels familiar. The emotional danger of enough is that it creates a new vulnerability. You can misuse what you begged for. You can expose what was hidden. You can self-direct instead of God-direct. This is where many misunderstand breakthrough. They think it ends the story. But the miracle does not remove responsibility. It returns choice. Before, there was only one move. Pour. Now options multiply. Voices get louder. Desire reawakens. And desire, when dormant for long, is overwhelming. People rush or freeze. Both avoid discernment. The miracle did not fail. It simply handed you the pen. Lack had familiar rhythms. It keeps expectations low. Excuses inaction. Allows spiritual language without responsibility. In lack, you can say, "I'm waiting on God." But in provision, God may say, "I'm waiting on you." That shift is destabilizing. Fear reframes the miracle as burden. It whispers, "This is too much." This is not rebellion. It is grief. She is grieving the old version of herself. A life organized around need. A faith that only had to believe, not decide. Even good transitions involve loss. The miracle did not simplify her life. It expanded it. And expansion is tiring. Sometimes the hardest part of faith is accepting that God's answer will require more of you than your prayer did. Matthew 11:28 says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Rest is not always the removal of responsibility. Sometimes it is the assurance that you are not carrying it alone. Provision asks for participation. Participation exposes you. Lack required prayer. Provision requires discernment. Discernment asks, "What is this for?" Faith said, "God can." Discernment asks, "God, how?" It is the bridge between miracle and meaning. Silence protects that bridge. If she speaks too soon, opinions rush in. Expectations form. Pressure multiplies. Without discernment, Fear pushes her to explain. Guilt pushes her to give prematurely. Excitement pushes her to rush. With discernment, she pauses. She stays private. She returns for instruction. Discernment does not eliminate the what-ifs. It prevents them from deciding for her. This is where many miracles leak through relationships. Some people finally receive what they prayed for, and before they understand what it is for, it is already gone. Not because they were greedy, but because they were grateful and unguarded. Provision often activates old family dynamics, unspoken expectations, guilt tied to having more, the need to prove generosity. People give not from overflow, but from relief mixed with guilt. They don't yet know how to say, "I have, but I am not assigned to fix everything." So provision becomes porous. The provision didn't create the weakness. It revealed unresolved boundaries. It attracts pressure before it attracts peace. This is where paralysis sets in. Not disbelief, not rebellion. Wait. Too many options. Too much responsibility. She does nothing. And this time, doing nothing is wisdom. The oil did not stop because God withdrew. It stopped because discernment had to catch up to provision. Provision does not mean permission. Breakthrough does not mean access. If you don't pause, relief will rush you into regret. Faith filled the jars. Discernment will keep her from spilling them. Why she goes back to Elisha is emotionally significant. She doesn't run to the market. She doesn't announce the miracle. She returns, not because she lacks faith, but because faith has brought her to a boundary. I trusted God to pour. I do not yet trust myself to decide. That awareness is faith. Earlier faith looked like obeying without proof, pouring without seeing. Now faith looks like resisting the urge to act too fast, sitting with silence, returning for instruction instead of improvising. This is faith that waits, and waiting is harder than pouring. You came near when I called you, and you said, "Do not fear." She is not abandoned in this silence. She is being led through it. The room is full, jars pressed close, sons watching, relief present, fear whispering, responsibility forming. Elisha is not in the room, but he is felt, not urgent, not demanding, present. She does not open the door. She does not decide alone. What God has done is too important to rush. So before the oil is sold, before planning replaces prayer, she turns back, not to beg, but to align. She is no longer only a woman crying out for rescue. She is becoming a woman entrusted with direction. The miracle has not failed her. It has matured her. The oil stopped. God did not. And sometimes, the most faithful thing you can do after a miracle is return to Him and ask, "What now?" And that is why she can walk forward steady. This is a space where Bible stories meet real lives, where faith restores identity and financial freedom follows truth. Let's connect. Stay close as we grow together. Thank you for your time. We meet again in the next episode of The Widow and the Oil.